I always say clarity is the starting point of success. Look for the patterns. Look for the times where you feel you're most fulfilled. Something I always say that you can't allow perfect to become the enemy of progress. I mean, I think if you can get your message across in a clear way and is memorable.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Walk to Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do us one teeny tiny little favor. Make sure to give us a follow because we're bringing on the best of the best guests this year. This is our year. And so without further ado, let's get right into this one. We have a good friend of mine, Eric. For anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to get to know you yet or get to meet you, tell us about yourself really quickly. What's your elevator pitch? Who are you? What do you do?
Well, I am your procrastination prevention partner. I'm the author of The Discipline of Now, and I'm the host of the 30-Minute Hour podcast. Now, I help entrepreneurs to beat procrastination so they can make more money, get more done, and feel more confident.
Amazing, Eric. And let's hop into the time machine and let's go back into your walk to wealth. Tell us, what was your journey like? What was your childhood like? What was the concept of money? What was the concept of wealth or entrepreneurship like when you were growing up back in the day?
So, like, my dad had a tremendous influence on me. And it wasn't so much a lot of the things that he said. He told me things, but it was really just looking at his example. I mean, he was just up and out. He was never late to anything. If he's in a group, he's the president of the group. He was never a pew member at anything. And I think that work ethic is what rubbed off on me. And that sent me a message that you're supposed to work hard to get what you want. So that was really kind of my earliest thing. Like, he was entrepreneurial. I mean, he worked in the government, but he also had real estate holdings and was always a landlord. So I saw that, and he was always doing different things in addition to just depending on the government income. So that was my upbringing and background. We were in the middle class, your traditional middle class upbringing.
Amazing. So let me ask you then, at what point did you kind of unlock your entrepreneurial bug? Was it something that you just developed since childhood, or was it something that you stumbled on across the way? And how did you get into what you're doing now?
So everything started for me in college. It was my senior year at Hampton University, and I talk about this in the book. And I was having this conversation with my good friend Darnell, and John. I have to admit that at the time, Darnell and we were a little different, right? He was all about his purpose, and I was all about the party. He would always give me a hard time and say, man, you need to get serious, figure out what you want to do. And I'm like, man, Darnell, loosen up. We've got plenty of time for all that talk. You coming to the frat party with me or not? And so several weeks go by. He and I don't talk, but then I get a phone call from his mother informing me of the fact that he was killed in a car accident. Changed everything for me, sent me a message that maybe I don't have the time that I think to do the things that I need to do. And really from that moment on, that's what's given me a focus on becoming more productive and overcoming procrastination, having a laser focus on your goals. But that right there was the starting point. And that's really the main reason that you and I are talking right now.
Amazing. So let me ask you, man, what was that like at that time period? Like, as you said, you were in this moment or a mindset where it's like, you think you got all the time in the world, you're partying, you're living your life, you're enjoying the time, you're young, you're enjoying the youth, and it's life kind of just threw a curveball at you out of nowhere. What was that like navigating that during that time period? Because there's not often that life really hits us with something like that early on in our years. So it's like, what was that like being, probably in your early 20s, late teens, probably, like, and just having to just readjust the whole way you view the world?
That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. That's really good. So the thing that really got me with that is that Donnell, he wasn't a reckless person. Right? He was probably the cleanest living person that I knew at the time. And he didn't drink, was very careful about what he ate, wasn't just out there. And that was just a single car accident. And it really sent me a message that time is short, and you just never know. And, but up to that point, I'm thinking that, people, that when things happen, it's because the person, they're sick, they're this, they're that. But time is short. And I think we've seen that even with the pandemic and just over the past few years. So it really allowed me to focus on what's important. And so that incident really spoke to me.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine how much that's it. Like how that impacted you during that age. And so now you're at this point where you have to readjust everything. And now it's like, okay, I'm getting serious now. What were some of the first steps you kind of took as I said, as your paradigm just completely you kind of uproot the way you viewed everything after you kind of got out to the other side of that? What were some of the first steps you started taking to become more productive, to become less just carefree in the world? What were some of the steps that after the event happened that you started taking to get yourself in the right direction?
Well, I think, like I said earlier, I think I always had this work ethic, but I lacked clarity and focus. And so what happened was I took the message to be that I need to climb this success ladder. I need to succeed. I need to really pursue this career. And so that's what I did. And I got corporate America opportunities, and I really went after it. And I got to a point where you could argue I had arrived, right? I was a district manager in the automotive space. I had 17 locations, 500 employees. We're winning all of these awards. People are patting me on the back. And I remember this one day in particular, I'm driving in my BMW, feeling pretty good. But then I looked in the rearview mirror, and then I just noticed my eyes. The eyes that were looking back at me were the eyes of someone who hated what he was doing. So it was like I was making the income, but I really wasn't having an impact. And it really got me to think, well, maybe there's more.
Yeah, tell me more. What does that feel like? What did that make you feel internally?
It was just, I wasn't fulfilled. That's really what it was. It was like there was something missing. Like there's got to be more. Yeah, I'm making money and getting all this recognition, but what else is there? And so I really started to think about, what did I really want? And I'll never forget, I went to like one of those headhunters.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of the hot job in those days was the pharmaceutical sales. That's a lot of my friends. They tell me about, they're on the golf course all the time and they're making all this money. I'm like, I want to do that. And so the guy says to me, he's like a headhunter. He says, now, Eric, why in the world would someone hire you for pharmaceutical sales? It's not on your background. Let's think about this. He said, Eric, what is it that you really want to do? And I paused and I'm like, well, yeah, I want to make more money. I really didn't have a clear answer. I thought it was all about being successful. And then that really caused me to do some soul searching. And I started to think about, when did I really feel like I was fulfilled? And when I rewind the tape, it was always when I was presenting in front of a group. So like even like in some of my jobs in corporate America, I was a corporate trainer. And I remember I used to sit there like, man, they actually pay people to do this all the time. And I would be thinking, oh, wow, wouldn't that be cool? Yeah. And whenever I was speaking in front of church audiences, I would have that same feeling. So finally, after a few years of procrastination, I actually went and joined Toastmasters International. And that's when I really started. And then just one step just led to another. And here we are.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let me ask you, right, because this is a great segue to our main conversation today about your blueprint. And you mentioned one of the first steps is getting that clarity. How does one begin to start getting that clarity? What did the soul searching process look like? Because a lot of times people tell us, oh, we need to have clarity. We need to visualize where we want to end up. But it's like, with all these different opportunities, with all these different paths we can walk on, with all these different people in our ear telling us what we should and what we shouldn't do, and all these different influences, it's kind of hard to black out all the noise to get time to actually even listen to what it is that you truly got to do. So what did that soul searching process look like for you?
Well, so for me, I always say clarity is a starting point of success. And so for me, I just had to look for the patterns. Look for the times where you feel you're most fulfilled. You look at what's something that you do that it's effortless for you. Like you could just do it all the time. But when other people look at you, it's like, man, how are you doing all of that? Like I'm sure people, John, with you and podcasting, like, man, you're doing all these episodes. How are you coming up with content? How are you so consistent? And it's just what you do. So I think you have to look for those patterns in your life. I think you look at that and look at something also that you've overcome. But what's a struggle that you've overcome? that and then when you're talking to other people about that struggle, you just feel like you feel great when you're advising someone on that struggle that you've overcome. Now the thing is, it's not. Some people, I know people who kind of instantly know exactly what it is they want to do. They just get it and they just focus in that area. But for other people, it takes time, and so sometimes it's a process. You have an idea, and you have to. That doesn't mean you have to quit your job and just go all in, but you can start. And like for me, I started in Toastmasters, so I'm still working and all of that, but I just started going to Toastmasters meetings, and I started speaking. And then I met someone who trained professional speakers. And then someone else advised me to join the National Speakers Association. So the steps just manifested themselves. So hopefully I've answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. I'm kind of curious too, because as we're having this conversation, I'm also right now in a public speaker school, and I'm investing in growing as a speaker. I'm also right now, by the time this episode drops, right now I paid for an accelerator program a couple of weeks ago, actually, to land my first TED Talk. So that's something that I'm currently working on right now. And it was quite a hefty fee, honestly. And it was something that made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. But as you know, growth is usually on the other side of discomfort. So it's like, for me, I'm currently in this space where I'm removing the word I'm working on. So I'm working on progressing as a speaker and getting into paid public speaking. So let me ask you for Toastmasters, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, explain to the listeners what is a Toastmasters, and then two, from now, me asking you out of my own genuine curiosity, what was that like being in a Toastmasters group?
So Toastmasters International, it's a speaking organization. It's every 6 months it may be like $50 or so, but you basically get to work on. It's a safe environment for you to learn how to improve your speaking skills, and they teach you the foundational things. Like you can have roles at the meeting where it involves you speaking. You could actually be a presenter. And the cool thing with Toastmasters is they have someone they call the counter. And so this person sits there and counts how many times you use filler words. And and they count. And it's a way that you overcome that habit when you're presenting. And then you have someone who evaluates your presentations, and there's a formal way to evaluate. So you're getting constant feedback in a safe environment. So for example, if you, let's say on your job, and you're presenting something, there could be consequences if the presentation doesn't go well, right? Whereas at Toastmasters, it's a safe environment where you can learn to become a better. It's so foundational. And I mean, whenever I'm speaking, there's always some technique that I use that I picked up from Toastmasters.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like communication is something that is so underappreciated. And I was looking into this now, as I said, because I'm growing as a speaker now. And it's like this tool that we have, our voice, is something that although we use it every day, no one actually intentionally practices. Everyone says practice makes perfect, but everyone talks every day and not everyone is good at communicating. So a little bit of a quick tangent. How has communication helped you propel further along in your journey?
Oh, I think it's a separator. I mean, I think if you can get your message across in a clear way and is memorable, it separates you. I mean, for example, I have a book, and if I'm out talking and if someone is in the audience and they like what I'm saying, they're likely to buy the book. They're likely to invite me to speak somewhere. They're likely to have me coach them. It's a different level of influence when you're standing in front of a room talking to people about your topic, and you're able to use the right devices and techniques. And I mean, there's so many people have sat through conferences and speakers, and it's boring. It's an hour of your life you'll never get back. So it really grabs your attention when someone is effective and they're able to tell a story. Like I've had people that I've seen 5 years later that sat in one of my audiences that can tell me one of the stories I told. So yeah, it can be a game changer if you really lean in on how to do it correctly.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I experienced that for the first time. Well, I did it virtually, but it's nothing like in person. So in person, I experienced that for the first time because I've spoken to big groups of people online. But it wasn't until Podfest Expo this past January where I actually spoke in person for the first time conference ever. I kid you not, like it was the most nerve-wracking experience. And as I said, I'm very social, I'm very extroverted, but man, it's nothing like speaking on a stage for the first time. And it was like slightly elevated. Like it was like, I was probably about like 3 or 4 feet higher than everyone else, and everyone was seated. The room was packed, like, to the point where people were standing around because the chairs were all filled up. Yeah, I think it was close to like maybe 200 people in that room. And I kid you not, when I grabbed the microphone, I looked into the crowd and I just blanked. And honestly, I don't know what I said. I mean, I do know what I said because it was my story. I was just telling people, and I was talking about this concept called Ikigai, which I've been talking about a lot. But like for me, just presenting that, fortunately, as I said, I knew what I was talking about because I talked about it for so many times prior to that through podcast guesting, but I never presented that in front of people. And it was only 5 minutes, so it's not like I had to remember too much. But by the end of it, once I gave the microphone back, it was like a couple minutes after when I finally got my senses back, and I was like, oh, shoot, I just did that. And I don't remember anything, like at all. But afterwards, I'll make the story a little shorter. There was people that came up to the hallway and was like, you did it great. Like, you did an amazing. Like, you did a good job. And I was like, I did? I don't remember. Wow. I wish I did. I blanked. It was one of those things where it's like, that was my first time. And so it was, but as you said, it's nothing like being a communicator that can communicate effectively. Because a lot of times, if you know the right people, you can get yourself on the stage. That's something that a lot of people don't know. It's not as hard as people make it seem to get on a stage. But then when all these people are going on stages back to back to back, because mine was a Petra Kucha speech. It was only 5 minutes long, and it was all rapid fire, one after another. And so for me, I would not toot my own horn. I think I did a little bit better than a lot of the people. And so it was like people noticed that, and it separated me, as you said. So I agree with you 100%. And to kind of like segue back into the conversation, you mentioned too, it just, you didn't really know what you were getting into. You got yourself into the Toastmaster, but as you were moving forward, the path that you needed to head down started to clear up. And a lot of people don't take that first step because they can't see down the path. They can't see the end of the tunnel. They can't see the light. And yet, despite that, we're meant to move forward anyway. So take us through your story. What was it like navigating this world while you knew you had to do something better? You got into the Toastmaster group, but you didn't really know how it was all going to play out.
Well, again, it's something I always say, that you can't allow perfect to become the enemy of progress. And you can't think, well, I need to have it all figured out. So at first, I was procrastinating because I'm thinking, at some point, I came to this realization, again, that I wanted to be a speaker. But then I started thinking, okay, well, what am I going to say that hasn't been said? Who's going to pay me to come talk to their group? I started having all these negative thoughts. And then finally, after like 3 years, I joined Toastmasters. And then the next steps just started to reveal themselves. Like, again, I found somebody who coaches professional speakers. Like the other thing that happened when I was in Toastmasters, someone convinced me to join to participate in these speech contests. It wasn't even on my radar. I wasn't thinking about it. But the first contest I was in, I went pretty far, and I'm winning all these trophies for first place. And it was almost like it was confirmation that this is the path that I'm supposed to be on. And something else that really helped me is that I came across, while I was doing the contest, I came across one of my mentors. He's one of my mentors to this day. His name is Ed Tate, and he is like a world-renowned speaker. He's won the International Toastmaster Speech Contest, been like the world champion of speaking, and I had him coach me, and that was tremendous, and really pointing out my blind spots. I would videotape my presentation and send it to him, and he'd tell me the terrible job I did. And but no, it was tremendous. But that's why I say to people, don't allow perfect to become the enemy of progress. What's the next step that you can take? And the other steps will reveal themselves. Yeah,
definitely. And so let me ask you, how does one get over the fear associated with taking that first step? Because that's usually the thing that's holding them back. Sometimes of course, they don't really know how it's going to play out and what's the next step. But sometimes it's really usually something that's underneath that's hidden. And usually it could be fear, it could be anxiety, it could be worried. Like, how does one overcome some of these things that are usually underlying that actually prevent us from taking that first step or that next step?
Well, so the key is to focus on small steps. because like a step could be picking up the phone, right? A step could be, let's say if you feel led to start a podcast, a step could be giving John a call, right? And saying, hey, you've got a successful podcast. What advice do you have for me? And then that could lead to other steps along the road. So I can't see how someone would be afraid to call you. Now, their fear is a whole other thing, because that is one of the things that causes people to procrastinate, right? So you have the fear of success, which is very popular a lot of times. So where that comes in with speaking is you may think, okay, well, maybe I only have one good presentation. What if I do well and now they want me to speak everywhere? And what if I don't measure up? What if I bomb? What if I get criticized? What if I get judged? And so all of those things start to come to mind. But it's really a couple of things on fear is that you notice a lot of times the two words are what if, right? What if this happens? So your fear is in the future. So I think to overcome that fear, you have to change those two words from what if to even if. So even if I bomb this presentation, I'm going to continue because I feel like, and by the way, I bombed. I have gotten up and I've been in front of a room full of like 200 people and literally forgot what I was going to say. I'm still alive. I'm still here. Nobody died. So it happens. And so you have to change that from what if to even if and recognize that your fears are in the future. And most of the time, things work out a lot better than if you're anticipating that worst case scenario, things do work out much better.
Yeah, and that's some solid advice, even if I haven't heard that one before yet. So instead of saying, what if I fail, even if I fail, because as you said, most of us, it's not life or death. And I say this all the time. In most of these situations, it's like no one's getting hurt. No one's losing their life, hopefully, unless something super tragic out of the blue happens. But then you're definitely, if you're thinking about situations like that, you're definitely too far into the weeds and worst case scenarios. And so you're just getting in your own way there. And I love that you mentioned the fear of success, because a lot of times we'd have this thing within us where it's like, we don't want to succeed because we know if we succeed, that as you said, more opportunities will come, and more opportunities come, then it's like, well, I never had opportunities before, and people like me don't normally get opportunities. So should I even have these opportunities and things like that? I love that you mentioned that, because it's something that a lot of people definitely battle with, and a lot of people struggle at getting over. And I know I always wanted to talk about too a little bit, when you do take these small steps and you start tracking a lot of these things. I know you talk about the small wins. Like, how do we start giving ourselves grace? How do we start giving ourselves gratitude so that we can be grateful for the journey that we're on, that we can appreciate the journey we're on, and not just be in a constant state of fear because we have anxiety, or we don't know what the next step is, or we don't have a super clear vision as to everything. How do we become more grateful and appreciative and present while we're on this journey?
So the challenge is that we have this natural bend for negativity, right? That's just how things go. We're constantly scanning our environment for threats. If you're in business, you're thinking about, what are my opportunities? What do I need to fix? Where are the problems? And the challenge with that is it's easy to become a pessimist. I mean, the studies show that 80% of the typical person's self-talk is negative. If you just sit back and listen to those thoughts, oh my God, I can't believe she cut me off in traffic. Oh, I can't, I had to sit through this meeting. So you have to be intentional about cultivating positivity. You literally need like a daily strategy to be positive. It just doesn't, you can be positive one day. If you don't have systems in place, you'll go to a negative spiral the next. So one of the things I help people with is to really track their wins, right? And so that, like people I coach, first question I'll ask them, they know that I'm going to ask them, so tell me about your wins. And I've had people, when I first ask them that question, they have nothing to say. I didn't have any wins. No, it was a whole week. We simply talked. Nothing good happened. Nope, I don't know. But now, after we've been talking for a while, literally they'll go on for the first 15 minutes about all the great things that have happened to them. Yeah, and so that, I think what happens is you start to build momentum, and the more you focus on your wins, the more wins you have to focus on. And these wins have always been there. You just now focused on. But it's so important to really focus on those small wins and keep track of them. Keep track of them.
It goes back to the reticular activating system, right? What you focus on expands, and there's so many different ways to say the same exact thing. That's just the way I was taught. And with the reticular activating system, it's something where when you lock in on something, your brain is meant to find everything to justify that one thing. So it's like if you tell yourself, that's why everyone talks about affirmations and all that stuff, because it's like if you tell your brain one thing, it's going to do everything in its power to find all the supporting evidence to justify whatever that statement was. And so if you start tracking wins, as you said, then it's like, well, now I have to start looking for all the wins. And it puts the tracker that your brain is using onto something that's actually positive and working out in your favor. And let me ask you this, though. I want to hear your definition of what a win is, because a lot of times people don't give themselves credit where it's due. So how would you define a win?
A win is anything that promotes your personal or professional health and well-being. So any step forward in that direction. I mean, it doesn't have to be huge. I mean, it could be you have a business, you got a 5-star review. I launched my podcast and I did 1 episode. So anything that I stuck to, I said I was going to stop eating donuts and I haven't eaten the donuts for a week. I mean, that's a win. I said I was going to start using my food diary and writing down what I've been keeping that up for. So you really have to track that progress.
And then, so let me ask you then, so what have you seen in the people that do track their wins? What are some of the changes in their personality, maybe in their business and maybe in their personal life, whatever it may be? What are some of the changes some of the people can look forward to and expect once they start tracking this stuff, once they start adopting that mindset of gratitude and start being more present and appreciative of themselves and the things that they accomplish?
Well, again, I think it can be a complete game changer. And so, because again, everybody's been towards the negativity. And I work with entrepreneurs who they start focusing on their wins. So then when they meet with their team, they ask the team in the meetings, they have one-on-ones, right? So let's say if your boss says, hey, we're going to have a one-on-one, you're thinking negative. Like, oh, here we go. What did I do wrong? Where I have people who own companies that I coach that they're focused on the wins. And so now their people are focused on the wins. And if they say, hey, we're going to have a one-on-one meeting, the people are looking forward to it. So it's changing the culture of companies, because now people are looking forward to meeting with, and they've changed the name. They don't even call it a one-on-one. I have people that they're calling it a you and I meeting or a one with one, just to maintain that positivity. And sales, profits, things have improved.
Yeah, that's amazing. Let me ask you, what changes have you seen in your own personal life once you adopted this attitude of gratitude and this mindset of appreciating all the wins in your life? And what was it like in your own personal life, making that switch, making that adjustment? How was it like doing that and switching that, flipping your brain to not be so proclined to the negative and to be proclined to the positive instead?
Yeah, I wasn't always a naturally positive person. I would complain, and I'm your typical type A personality, and I'm always looking for how high is up. And so it's changed my approach tremendously. I mean, and I think it's helped with the results, because eventually you get what you expect. So I think my outlook is completely changed. And I think people that meet me now think that I'm just one of these naturally positive people. But what they don't know is I work at it. Like, I literally write down my wins. Everything I teach people to do, I do myself. And so from a gratitude standpoint, in the mornings, I try to focus on things that I have to be grateful for that don't cost money. And I'm just constantly keeping that in mind every day. And then I'm always focused also on how far I've come in a particular area and what's the progress that I've made. I think we don't stop and smell the roses, especially if you're that type A type of person. So it's had a profound impact on me.
Yeah, it's one of those things you mentioned too, stopping and smelling the roses. It's something that I had to learn to do, because you get so caught up sometimes in this go, 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 go. And I got to accomplish everything and then some. And build the Leaning Tower of Pisa and build Rome in a day and build the Great Wall of China all at the same time. And it's like you get so caught up sometime in these activities and these endeavors that we never take time to smell the roses, as you said. So let me ask you, for anyone that's right now that is struggling to get some clarity, is struggling to start taking these steps and is procrastinating, what are some of the tips that they could just put in their tool belt real quick to start getting them in action and not have them be victim to analysis paralysis or fear or insecurity or whatever?
Well, I think you first off, you have to be very careful how you talk to yourself. Like I know for me, I was my own harshest critic. So I think you have to talk to yourself with grace and forgive yourself when you don't stay on the path you said you were going to get on. When you said that you were going to call John about podcasting and you didn't, you can't just beat yourself up. You have to say, okay, I'm going to call him tomorrow. So I think that is a key thing there. Like your mental self-talk, you really have to make sure that you forgive yourself. And just a basic thing that people can do to overcome procrastinating is get in the habit of making appointments with yourself. So instead of saying that, oh, I'm going to write a blog post this week, say I'm going to write the blog post on Wednesday from 1 o'clock to 1:30 in my home office, and you get your Google Calendar and make that an official appointment. So you have to include the day, the time, and the place. When you make that appointment with yourself, the studies show that when you include the place, you're 40% more likely to follow through. And you have to treat that appointment as serious as if you were meeting with the president of the United States. You wouldn't just, if you had a meeting with the president, no matter what your political affiliation, if you had a meeting with the president on Wednesday, you wouldn't just not show up. You have to treat yourself with that same level of respect. But if people do that, they'll find that they're not procrastinating as much.
Yeah, that's some solid advice. And you've been dropping solid gems this entire conversation. Where can we connect with you at? Where can we find you at if we wanted to take that next step and break free from the procrastination handcuffs that hold a lot of us back?
Well, you can pick up a copy of my book, The Discipline of Now, 12 Practical Principles to Overcome Procrastination. I may even have a copy of it right here.
Yeah, it's white and red with a clock on it for anyone that's listening to the audio.
Yep, there you go. It's The Discipline of Now. You can go to my website, ericmtwiggs.com, ERICM Twiggs, TWIGGS.com. Pick up a copy. You can also check out the 30-Minute Hour podcast. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all those great places.
And I'm going to be on there soon. So if you guys haven't checked it out already, make sure to go check that out because you got to come support your boy, man. I'm going to go and drop some nuggets over there. And now it's time for the final 5 questions. Same questions we ask every single guest. Rapid fire round. Let's get right into it. Question number 1. What is the most impactful lesson you've learned in life?
Well, this came from my mom. Birds of a feather flock together. I'm telling you, I used to hate when she said that to me all the time, but I've just found that to be more and more true.
What is the most admirable trait a person can have?
Integrity. I think when you follow through on your intentions and you're consistent to that degree, I think that integrity is critical.
If you had to change someone's life with one book, which book would you recommend?
Well, aside from my book, I would recommend the Bible. Yeah, for me, that's a life-changing book.
What is the legacy that you're trying to leave behind?
That I inspired people to move in the direction of their goals. And I left that well. And the final piece is that I left people better than I found them.
And for anyone trying to embark on their walk to wealth today, what is the first step they could take to start that journey?
To start. That's it. So move. You have to move in the direction that you feel led and called in. It could be a small step, but you have to move.
Eric, that's our time here today. Thanks again for hopping on the podcast. Thanks again for dropping the nuggets that you did. And I trust that my audience definitely took a lot away from this conversation because I know I did.
Hey, thank you. It's an honor to be on your show, and I had a blast.